Well, good evening and welcome to the Federal Way City Council meeting for February 15th of 2022. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. All right, so we'll go right into presentations. Item 3, we've got certificate of appointment, the Human Services Commission. Councilmember Walsh.
Yes, the council has appointed several people to, or reappointed several people to the Human Services Commission. If any of these are here, I don't see them right now, if they would like to come to the podium. Cynthia Ricks-McAtan, Mary Schultz, Ken Stark, and Aaron Walsh. And I don't believe any of them are here, but Ken Stark, Mary Schultz, and Cynthia Ricks-McAtan are appointed to serve as voting members of the Federal Way Human Services Commission for a term to expire January 31st, 2025. And Aaron Walsh is appointed to the same thing for a term to expire January 31st, 2024. But we appreciate the fine work that the Human Services Commission does. These are all reappointments or changing from to being a voting member in the case of Aaron. But we appreciate the job that they do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Okay, item B, certificate of appointment, Planning Commission, Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, is Vicki Chenoweth here? I don't know if I see her. Seeing that she's not, I'm here to do the appointment for Vicki Chenoweth, who was voted on to be the alternate on the Planning Commission. And this is going to be a very, very hard, long commission because there's lots of things that we're working on, and we're glad that she stepped forward and was appointed. And she'll be an alternate on this committee starting as of now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item C, certificate of appointment for the Independent Salary Commission, Council President Kochmar.
Thank you. I don't believe that Greg Baruso is here, but this is in accordance with Federal Way Revised Code 2.80. Gregory Baruso is hereby appointed to serve as a voting member of the Federal Way Independent Salary Commission for a term to expire February 28, 2024, signed by all of our council members and mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, Mayor's Emerging Issues and Report. I've got the Mayor's State of the City address next Thursday, February 24th at 6 p.m. It'll be on YouTube, Channel 21, and Facebook Live, I believe. So I hope everybody can watch, and it'll get replayed many times after that as well. But it will air starting on Thursday, February 24th at 6 p.m. Hope you can attend electronically. City Council Annual Retreat is Saturday, February 26th in this room at 8:30 a.m. That's a Saturday. And I want to let everybody know that Brian Davis has been appointed by me as an interim city administrator to help out with all the things that are going on at the city. He's going to be joining us on the subdais there, and he's going to be helping me in the administration of the city and helping council and helping staff as well. So thank you very much, Brian. Okay, and council committee reports. First, we've got item E, Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee. That's Councilmember Walsh.
Yes, we met this last a week ago, and there are several items that will be on the agenda tonight stemming from that meeting.
Very good.
And that should do it for right now.
Great. Land Use and Transportation Committee, Councilmember Dovey.
Yes, we had our first meeting earlier in the month. You'll see a lot of things, as we all know, on the consent agenda. Our next meeting is March 7th in the chambers. And we have lots of things on our agenda we'll be working on. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Finance, Economic Development, and Regional Affairs Committee, also otherwise known as FEDREC, Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our meeting is going to be on February 22nd at 5 p.m., and it is going to be on Zoom. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, LTAC, Councilmember Acevedo.
Yeah, I have no report. We don't have a quorum, so we may not be meeting this following our next meeting. And Tim is active in recruiting to to fill positions.
All right.
So,
Okay, thank
we
you
need
very
help.
much. All right, thank you. Okay, now we've got the Deputy Mayor report and Regional Committee's report as well. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Last week, I attended the PIC meeting via Zoom, and we had several new members there from different cities. It's always a great time to listen to people from other cities and what they're doing in their cities. I'd like to remind council that the agenda comes out a week before the meeting, and the meeting is on Wednesday, the second Wednesday, from 7 to 9, and it is over by 9 on those Wednesdays. Today, I attended skateboard, which is a transportation committee for South King County and North Pierce County. And we heard about the regional transportation plan, and councils, we were asked to go back to our councils and ask councils to look at the regional transportation plan from PSRC and give comments by February 28th. This is a really big deal. They've worked for a long time on this, for months and months on this. So you can go to their page, and if you need any help finding it, just let me know. But they would like to get comments from council members and from councils as a whole if we wanted to make a statement as a whole council. So I would encourage you to do that. The council has a new administrative assistant. Her name is Amy, and she is in the office right now. She started about a week ago, and she's doing great. So please drop in and say hi to her. She will be helping us with the senior commission. And so the senior commission members can certainly stop in and say hi to get to know Amy. And then, as the mayor said, the council retreat will be here on the 26th, starting at 8:30 and done by 4 to 4:30 sometime. And the agenda will be published next week.
All right, great, thank you. All right, Council President report, Council President Kuzma.
Thank you very much. I'd encourage all of you who are interested in the retreat to put that on your calendar for February 26th. It probably will go from 8:30 till about 3:30 or 4. We have a very large number of issues to discuss, and it's going to be a very, very fully packed agenda. But I believe it's going to be on TV, is that right, Mayor?
I believe so, yes.
A film, so you'll also be able to watch on TV. Also, the Kiwanis group did receive a request from the Multi-Service Center for volunteers. They don't have enough volunteers, especially, I think, during the first shift, to come and help with handing out food and clothing items to the people that are in need in our community. So if you have any interest in that at all, please call the Multi-Service Center. And just to let you know, we still have a high rate of crime in our community with regard to our retailers, and so we're working on those issues as well. Feel free to contact us if you have any concerns. We see a lot of things that are going on in the community, particularly, on Ring Doorbell and neighbors.com and Facebook posts. So feel free to contact us if you have any concerns, or if you think that there's anything that the city should be doing with regard to crime, theft, those kinds of issues. I don't think we're any different than any other city in the South End. We have the same issues that a lot of the South End cities are dealing with. So, but if we come together as a community and we work together, hopefully we'll be able to solve our problems together. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, now for the most important part of the evening, public comment. Craig Patrick.
Mayor,
Yeah,
do you want me to read the rules?
we're okay. Just remember, actually, I'll just synopsize. Everybody knows the rules. Make sure that when you're commenting, that you don't direct a comment directly toward an individual council member or identify a staff member. No personal attacks, obviously, and no, impertinent, personal, or slanderous remarks. And also, I just want to say, when the yellow goes on, that means you got 30 seconds. So really try to wrap up. And then when we get down to the red, if you've got to finish a sentence or just a quick thought, but let's not go too far past that. I hate interrupting people. All right, Craig.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council President. My name is Craig Patrick, and I want to talk about the St. Patrick's Day celebration coming up on March 17th. On Thursday, March 17th, the city is going to raise the St. Patrick's Day, or the Irish flag, the Irish national flag, at 9 a.m. I talked to Sarah at the city, who oversees the Diversity Commission, and we're going to start working with them to kind of promote this endeavor. This is going to be the third year we've done this. The topic this year is going to be unity, so we're going to try to draw on the Irish and show how they've unified with different cultures and different areas and different countries and how they work together and the impacts that they've had working together. The plan is to have Neil Hubbard, the bagpiper player, he's going to be there, but I'm also working on a drum line as well as a mariachi band. So I'm in the market for a three-piece mariachi band at 9 a.m. in the morning. So if that's doable, please reach out and try to contact me, or try to contact one of the people that are working with the Raising the Irish Flag. I'm happy to be able to do this. This is the third year that we've done this. And every year it seems to grow a little bit more and more. The first year we did this was the onset of the pandemic, and we couldn't meet. The second year we did it, we were able to meet. We had to social distance and have our masks on, but we were able to have a bagpipe player. So this year I'm hoping to grow it. And we're going to have a same thing, same kind of contest. We're going to recognize members of the community for their contributions and their culture, and the enmeshing of the American culture and the different people that make that up. So I want to thank the City of Federal Way for allowing us to do this, and I'm looking forward to working with the Diversity Commission and the community in general to make this happen. It's a great event, but I'd really like to see it grow and have other cultures like the Ukrainian flag or the Hispanic flag, or just more and more things to be more encompassing, more inclusive, versus to try to segregate out things. And this is a very diverse community. It's got great restaurants. That's one of the best things about it. And I'm really thankful, and I appreciate your time. Good evening.
All right, thank you. Oh. Jim Grayson.
Mayor Farrell, members of the council, I'm here because I disagree with an article that was written in the February 11th Mirror. I don't agree with the sentiments that were expressed in the article. I've lived here for over 46 years. When I first moved to Federal Way, we were virtually nothing. Along the way, we have become a city that we all should be proud of. We were unincorporated when I first got here, and it took several efforts to incorporate the city. And among the things I just looked at was a letter from Mary Gates thanking me for being the incorporation chair for one of those efforts. Among the things we have that we can really be proud of here at Federal Way is an outstanding police department. I've had the chance to work over the years with Ron Wood, our first chief, and Kirkpatrick, and Brian Wilson, badge from him. We have a lot of things that draw people into the area. Our parks are among the best in the South End. It's not uncommon on a good sunshiny day to go to Celebration Park and see kids out there playing, or at Town Square Park. Town Square Park hosts a lot of events that are very successful. Among them is a music festival that was put on by Jan Barber called Make Music Federal Way. It's an international event that draws people from all over, usually with hundreds of people. Mr. Mayor, thank you for helping us get that off the ground. That was terrific. We have libraries here at Federal Way. Bill Gates and I served on the King County Library Board for about 10 years. And during that time, we were able to bring in a Woodmont library to an area that had not been served very well. And the regional library here also brings in terrific assets. Powell's Wood is 10 acres of the most beautiful land in the state, thanks to Monty. Dumas Bay, the Dumas Bay retreat area is fantastic. The Pacific Northwest bonsai garden, I believe, is the best in the United States. We have the halibus. and we have some of the best, you mentioned restaurants, we have some of the best restaurants in the area. We have a diverse number of restaurants in the area. So we have a lot of things to be proud of. The only thing I would suggest we do is, rather than snapping at each other, we get together and work together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Debbie Peterson. And then Helen Kubik. And then Ken Blevins after that.
That was kind of a long walk. Good evening, council members, mayor. It's wonderful to see you all together in person tonight doing the work that you're doing. Thank you. I also want to ask that you all, as you're considering these use of ARPA funds and you're thinking about our community and what is happening today and tomorrow and right now for our children and our families, that you uphold listening to community voice and the needs of the community. We are a diverse city. We're a very diverse city, and we need to ensure that all of our residents, including the ones who very rarely get the opportunity to step up and speak, have the opportunity to be heard. So today, I'm going to speak on behalf of our littlest ones, our babies, whose tongues aren't even strong enough or formed well enough for them to say to us, we need your help. But our babies need our help, and our babies need us to help their families be able to provide for them. And our community needs our families to be able to provide for those babies so that our community can thrive, so that we can prosper economically, so we can all frequent all the beautiful, amazing restaurants that we have here. And I ask that as you consider use of ARPA funds, that you prioritize our babies and our families, and that you start at birth and prenatally in undoing the damage that our youth and young adults are walking through on a daily basis here. We have an opportunity to make things different. We have an opportunity to center federal way on opportunity. And I ask that you all prioritize our babies and our families and figure out, thinking about Jack Dovey's comments earlier, about how we think out of the box and do things a little differently. We need to think out of the box and do things differently than they have been done before to make sure that our babies do not end up where many of our young adults are right now. That's all the time that I needed. I will pass my time off to someone else too, but please remember, our babies can't speak for themselves. And many of their families don't feel comfortable or safe to be able to speak up on behalf of them. So let's all keep them in mind. Let's work together and collaborate. We can do this. We can, but we're going to have to work together and listen to all of the voices, even the ones who can't speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Kubik.
Okay, I'd like to address the Target property and the downtown core. So to recap what I said at the last meeting, what's the number one reason people want to live in a downtown area? It's because that's where their high-paying jobs are and they don't want to have to commute. I said the Target property should be used to build a 20-story office building with some high-paying jobs and medium-paying jobs that could give developers incentive to build high-rise condos on adjoining properties so people could walk to work. At the January 18th meeting, the question was asked, why aren't developers coming here to Federal Way to build high-rise buildings? The answer was, could be a market condition, it's not Bellevue. Okay, so it's not Bellevue, that's true. But what's one thing we have that Bellevue doesn't? Cheaper property. Now, we can let that work against us, or we could try to make that work for us. Downtown Federal Way, a place where you can still afford to walk to work. Now, affordable is a subjective term. Affordable to who? Take, for instance, a legal secretary that works in an office building, in a high-rise building in Bellevue. Can she afford to buy a condo in a high-rise building within walking distance of her job? Debatable. But in Federal Way, she can get way more bang for her buck. So if a business in a high-rise office building can have employees that can buy a home, and yes, a condo is a home, within walking distance of their jobs, what will that produce? Happier employees. High-rise condos can offer a wide variety of choices, from your top floor penthouses to your lower floor one bedrooms and even studios. So I'm not a salesperson, but we do need one to go out and sell downtown Federal Way to developers and to businesses, office building type businesses. Also, there was a gentleman here a few weeks ago that said he got drone footage of the views one could get in a high-rise building, and he said they were fantastic. So I think having our own drone footage of these views should be part of the Downtown Federal Way sales package. Downtown Federal Way, a place where you can still afford to walk to work and maybe even have a fantastic view. Also, I think we should keep the requirement that all these buildings have commercial retail, restaurants and such on their ground floors. But since the only property we have to start with is that Target property, we need to start with the jobs and let the rest follow. Again, start with the jobs, good paying jobs, not just minimum wage retail jobs.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. You'll be, Ken Blevins.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, President, Council, thank you for listening to us tonight and for me specifically. So I wanted to focus on safety. That's what I've been all about in the last couple of years. So I want to make sure that that's always out on the top of what we're doing here in Federal Way, because everything else falls in line with it. If everybody feels safe, then business does well, people want to move here, everybody's home values go up and or stay where they're at, and so on. But I've noticed that crime's actually gotten worse in the last year because of laws that were made down in Olympia. It's not just the ones that Jesse Johnson put forth and made it very difficult on our police department and every police department in the state, but it's also the other social stuff with the homeless drug addicts, putting them in hotels in our city and in our town, and basically forcing us to rezone. And so we just had an election year this last year, and I know a lot of people were talking about fighting that, and I hope that we still continue to fight it, and I'm hoping that's going to be on the agenda, and I hope we're active on making sure that our city's first, not King County. So what I'd like to hear within the next couple council meetings, if possible, I don't know if it's going to be tonight, an update on Federal Way PD's strategy on curbing the crime wave and the homeless drug addiction problem. It's really, that is kind of the key on all the rest of the stuff. Yes, we have stolen cars and all that kind of stuff, but that has to do with the Jesse Johnson bills. So any action items on the retail crime issue, I'd like to find out if there's any action items on that. You guys had a meeting on that. What are we actually doing about it? What is the council putting forth? What is the mayor putting forth to actually do something about it? Have you listened to, did you listen to those store owners? Did you listen to the police department and what would be better for our city, and how could we actually do something about it? What can we do? So can the council adopt an ordinance to stop shopping cart theft and use of stolen shopping carts? Because it's a mess. If we can put an ordinance to get all the retail stores that have carts to label their carts, that they have to label their carts up, so it's up to RCW, then we can actually make that happen. And we have groups in Federal Way that actually help out, and it won't cost very much for the city to help the stores do this. So organized crime is increasing because of Jesse Johnson's laws, stolen cars, package theft, retail gang theft. What is Federal Way doing about it? And one other question, is Brian Davis taking this new position because you're running for office? And if that is the case, is your campaign going to pay for it? Or can we get him to work here full-time as a full-time administrator that's not a politician? And I'm not against politicians necessarily, but it would be great to have somebody full-time just focusing on the city alone and not have politics to have to deal with the people, political stuff in there. So thank you very much for your time. Sorry for going over.
Mr. Blevins, I show up to work every day and put in a full day's work. Brian Davis was a finalist for the City of Bothell job as a city administrator, where we thought we were going to lose him to the City of Bothell. He was ready for professional growth, and we were exploring having a city administrator, which over the past 8 years, we haven't had a city administrator. For a brief time, we had a chief of staff, and we're exploring that. So Brian Davis is here because we've got a lot going on. So And has nothing to do with that other project you mentioned that shall not be named at a city council meeting. As well as also, Chief, can you please make sure that a representative from the police department reaches out to Mr. Blevins and lets him know of the different initiatives that we're doing with regard to crime control in our downtown, the extra patrols, how the council passed $1 million up to $1 million of extra overtime. If you could.
Mayor,
provide that.
perhaps we could
Yes.
have a report at the next council meeting so everybody would know that as well, not just Ken, but thank you.
All right. Okay, Jeff Tancredi.
Yeah, thanks, Council, Mr. Mayor, for letting me speak. Oops. The Federal Way Public Schools have approved a book called The Hate You Give for 8th graders reading list. This book is not appropriate for 8th graders. It promotes promiscuity, uses inappropriate language, and is not appropriate for any 8th grader. A more desirable book for 8th grade and beyond would be, let's say, for example, The President and the Freedom Fighter, a story about President Lincoln and Frederick Douglass trying to save the soul of America, written by Brian Kilmeade. But there's an even bigger issue here. The Federal Way Public Schools have failed to prepare kids adequately for life, particularly the high school level. In particular, they have failed the African American community. Why? According to the Brookings Institute, a left-leaning think tank, African American students nationwide score in the lowest percentile on standardized tests when compared to Caucasians, Asians, and Hispanics. We have proposed a robust expansion of JROTC for all of the Federal Way high schools. We did this to help the image of the high school, to help better prepare all kids for life. To date, the Federal Way School Board has failed to sit down and discuss this matter and to give their opinions and views on this proposed expansion. We have emailed each school board member, and so far, not even a tepid response. It's sort of like a thank you, or, it's really nothing. These individuals are elected by the people. Tonight, I'm asking all parents of Federal Way High School students, of all ethnic groups, to consider pulling your kids out of the 4 high schools and consider a better option to properly educate your kids. I've heard too many stories from parents. I talk to parents all the time. I'm retired, and frequently they'll say, yeah, I pulled my kids out of school, especially during the virus, because I saw what they were teaching my kids. No student at the high school level should be subjected to leftist partisan ideology and sexual promiscuity in the class instruction. If the Federal Way Public Schools really cared about black lives, they would have done much more over the past 10, 20 years to assist students with their coursework and test scores. Maybe it's time for Federal Way to look at establishing charter schools and other educational options for these high school students. We cannot continue having our high schools be in the bottom, and this is according to OSPI. We're in the bottom of the state compared to all of the other high schools in the state. Thank you for your time.
Nancy Justice, and then Dara Mandeville, and then Anna Patrick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm talking tonight about the Bally's, the old Bally's property. Many of us that live in the neighborhood there, Heritage Court and Colonial Forest, we've gotten letters that make it appear as if they're getting ready to build and trying to make it palatable for us. But as far as I know, it hasn't even been rezoned. But there's tags on the trees, like they're planning which ones to take out and sending this letter, and they've got a Zoom coming up so we can talk about it. But I'm just curious what is going on there. They say they want to build market rate townhouses for purchase or for rent, but we really don't know which it is. You know, if it has to happen, I would like for it to be owner occupied. We certainly don't want another Uptown Square in the corner in our backyard. So if anyone can let me know what's going on with that tonight, that would be great. And if not, if I could receive an email to let me know.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before we go to Dara, Brian, can you give Brian is actually continuing his role as the Community Development Director as well. So Brian, can you talk about where we're at with that?
Sure. So thank you for the question. So there's 3 steps with a zone change. The first is the city council to select it as a candidate to be rezoned. If that's selected, then it goes to the planning commission for a hearing, which is, I don't know if you attended those meetings or not, but the outcome of that meeting was. Yeah. Yeah. So the planning commission recommended, before it gets back to city council, that the applicant and the city enter a development agreement that ensures more ownership of multifamily development. And what that looks like, we don't know yet, but that was the direction from the planning commission. And so we have contacted the applicant who wants to rezone the property about that development agreement. They're working on sending that proposal to the city for consideration. That's where it stands right now. There has been no rezone, there's been no approval. It hasn't gone back to the planning commission, it hasn't gone to the city council for final approval. So as best we can tell, the applicant is working on a proposal that works for the city and them, and by them reaching out to nearby residents, which I applaud them for doing that, could further the dialogue to perhaps come to some sort of agreement before it comes back to the city. But it hasn't been rezoned, and there's several steps before that would even need to take before that could actually happen.
Okay, thank you. All right. Dara Mandeville.
Good evening. A little bit scattered tonight, as usual. I have a couple of things. And you threw me off guard when you said the thing about Brian being the interim, maybe, city. That's awesome. We love that. Many of us have been talking about that for a long time, so on the record, yay. One of the most important things I wanted to talk about tonight is the People's Harm Reduction Alliance. I know that this is bringing it up again, but there's a lot of people that don't know what PHRA is. But we've kind of revisited this topic, and many don't know that they're back in federal way. They, on their website, due to lack of funding, they're indefinitely suspending the mail order program, so they're not sending out. And a lot of people don't know, they don't just send free needles. They send meth pipes, heroin cookers. I mean, the list goes on. I've got it. If anybody wants to see it, I won't waste time reading it. But from their website, in an effort to mitigate some of this impact from them not being able to ship the supplies to your home, they're able to offer 2 temporary stops along their existing Wednesday route. Very first one is the Federal Way Transit Center every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. I'm not okay with that. We've reached out to Sound Transit. Sound Transit had no idea about it. They're not okay with it either. So I'd like to know what we as a city can do. You've got lots of people who will support the city. If we need to go out and protest these things happening, you know, it's 50-50. I don't have a problem with free needles being given to addicts if they're exchanging dirty needles. They're not. We all know that. We walk up and down the streets, we see the dirty needles. But the fact that there's, you know, I mean, some of this stuff is super disturbing. I've ordered it myself because I literally did not believe that it was a thing. There's a safe snorting party kit that they send to your home. Some of these things are disgusting. So I want to find out what we can do as a city to stop them from coming back into our city. And then there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, but I don't remember. So, and I just want to know, oh, and an update on extended stay, where we are with the refugees staying there, if we're going to transition soon because we're getting to March. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dara. Dara. We have not received an update with regard to extended stay in regard to the Afghan refugees, but we're being told, the last we heard, that it's going to be through the end of March. Chief, you had some issue with, or had some contact with Sound Transit, did you not, with regard to the needle issue?
Yes, Mayor. When this issue came up, I spoke with Sound Transit Police Chief Ron Mundell about the issue. He looked into it, informed me that Sound Transit Authority staff has spoken to the nonprofit, informed them that they were not to be conducting needle exchange at the Sound Transit Center. There's a process in order to get approval from Sound Transit to conduct activities such as that. So my understanding is last Wednesday, the group did not show up. And if they do show up, I think the security team there will ask them to leave the premise because they don't have authority to hand out the needles.
All right, thank you, Chief. Councilmember Norton?
Mayor Farrell, from what I understand, they're going to be at the day center tomorrow at 11:30.
I think right before this meeting I had heard that, so I you know.
We have email confirmation. They're going to be there to hand out sandwiches at 11:30, which is odd.
Well, it's good thank you for sharing that. We'll keep an eye on it. Keep us in the loop. But with regard to that, you know, what they're posting there in regard to that, we've addressed that. Okay, thank you. I think it's really important that we address these issues as they come up. Oh, and Mr. Blevins, just in regard to the full answer to the Brian Davis, not one extra dollar has been allocated as a result of Brian Davis staying at his position. So we're not we're not hiring anyone else to take his place at this point. Anna Patrick?
Evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council President, Council. Did I get that right? I always get nervous when I have to do that. So, okay. I would like to start off by thanking the council for their Coffee with the Council event last week. It was really great to have a circle here where we sat around and had organic, unscripted discussion regarding the issues with restorative community pathways and our concerns. I felt like they were heard. There was so much more we needed to talk about. And it's not just, it goes far beyond RCP. I'd really like our council to start working together with our school district, reach out to them, and get some conversations started, some organic conversations about what's going on in our schools and how this is going to impact our schools. I have grave concerns about what that's going to look like. Let's see. So I'd like to, hoping those conversations can continue somehow. And then, you know, we have questions about what's going to happen when these second chances don't work and when somebody doesn't want to participate and the accountability there. And then, you know, as King County turns up the dial with all of this, with the gun violence and that kind of thing, it's an issue. So I'd like to hear more from the groups that have come out here to share what they do to impact the youth in our community. I think inviting the groups that are working in our community to come and talk to the council and the community and hear from them would be helpful, just so they're heard too, and I think they can make an impact if we work together and make it work for everyone. What is Federal Way doing regarding the sweeping rezoning legislation? It's gone through some of it's passed the House, now it's on to the Senate. I really think this is going to be bad for Federal Way. We have a lot of people that are going to be squeezed out of their homes. And so I really hope that Federal Way is going to be doing something to address that, because we've already got our housing action plan here, and it kind of just makes that null and void. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anissa Rogers, and then Trinice Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council President, and Council members. My name is Nisa Rogers, and I'm the founder of Black Student Union at Fairway Public Academy. I would like to... Oh. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council President, and Council members. My name is Nisa Rogers, and I'm the founder of Black Student Union at Fairway Public Academy. I would like to speak in support of honoring the life and legacy of Mr. John Kona. After recently learning about Mr. Kona's connection to the city of Federal Way, he should be recognized for his contributions. As a young Black woman born in the city of Federal Way, it would be extremely meaningful to have a Black man represented in the form of having a street named after him. I've had the privilege to travel the country, and I've seen how common it is to see streets named after Black leaders. So why should Federal Way be an exception? The city of Federal Way is one of the most diverse cities in the nation, and I believe our streets should be the reflection of our diversity and rich history. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Great job.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council President, and Council. I'm here to support, of course, the renaming of one of the streets for Mr. John Conan. I just want to say he was a pivotal figure in the early history and development of Washington State. In 1883, the Conan family became the first African-American family to travel to Tacoma, Washington. He purchased 160 acres farmland north of North Tacoma, which is now part of Federal Way. In 1890, he started his own real estate firm, and he was a veteran who served in the Civil War. Mr. Conan leaves behind a quote, sterling legacy of accomplishments and a significant contribution in the development of the City of Destiny, Tacoma, or what we know as Federal Way. Please don't let the history fall, quote, on barren ground. Mr. Conan's legacy and contribution is a source of pride for the present generation of African Americans and, frankly, the Federal Way community as a whole. Having a street named after Mr. Kona would be a constant reminder and hope for young Black Federal Way residents and all residents to follow, quote, to follow his footsteps and to be all that they can be in the following in the American dream, in the hard work. His perseverance is undoubtedly resonates in our community, and it needs to be reserved as such. And he also needs to be observed for his rewards that he's had throughout this community. The fact of the matter is there has been an effort in past years to recognize Mr. Conan. It has been through the efforts of the Arts Commission. It has been declined. And at that point, it was just something as minute as a plaque. Right now, the African American community, as well as the community as a whole, is asking that we rename one of our streets after Mr. Conan. It would be a very small token based on the contribution and legacy that he has left behind. Thank you very much for your consideration.
All right, thank you.
So Mayor, how can we go ahead and put this idea through to one of our, did it go to the commission first or a committee? Would it go through Parks?
Well,
Ms. Honda, Deputy Mayor?
I have not seen a request from the Arts Commission for this, so I would love to see what it is that they wanted to do. But I recently found out from the Historical Society that the area that I live in was part of Mr. Kona's homestead. And so if we were to rename a road, I would suggest First Avenue from maybe Panther Lake to the end of 356. Because that's around where his homestead was.
That's a good idea. Sure, but which, how can we move this forward?
Perhaps it's something we could discuss. So what I would say is we could talk about it at the retreat. We could talk about it at the retreat. We could talk about it in committee. Whoever it could be in the land use committee, transportation.
Isn't it Parks that we go through for naming?
when we do benches and that kind of thing, it's through parks. I would think a road, well, how did you renamed a road downtown?
I think it went through transportation.
So I would do that, yeah.
May I suggest that considering it's by Panther Lake instead of First Avenue, where just a small part of First Avenue would be renamed, that perhaps Campus Drive, Southwest Campus Drive, and that way that whole street could be renamed in honor of Mr. Conan.
So perhaps we could just refer this to Councilmember Dobie to pick up on it?
Right.
I'll take it up in land use and we'll get it on the agenda.
All right, okay. All right, thank you. All right, I think we've got, do we have Jackie Adams on the line?
Yes, I believe so.
Do we have any others on the line after Jackie Adams?
I have Christopher Lee signed up, but I don't see him on the line. But Jackie is on the line and unmuted.
All right, Jackie?
Hello, Council. Thank you so much for allowing me to present today. I am here to address some of the comments that I read this weekend. My husband and I were homeowners in Federal Way, longtime South King County residents. We both grew up in SeaTac, and when we bought our home, we decided to live in Federal Way. Partially for the diversity, growing up in a diverse community, we wanted to provide that for our child. One of the reasons that we came here is because we wanted to be surrounded by just a wealth of people from many places with many different backgrounds. I was incredibly disheartened to see some misinformation, disinformation, and unbecoming conduct posted online that was referenced in the article in the Federal Way Mirror over the weekend. I am very disheartened because I know the tough job it must be for all of you to do your great work during a pandemic, even just in general. And I do respect the work that all of you do, making local government work for the people. I will say that I want to challenge you as a citizen, as a mother, to do better. This type of division is not something that can stand in Federal Way. We see it in Seattle on their council. We see it in Burien and their council. I did not expect to see it here. I feel that the council needs to take a strong stance on public health matters in Federal Way and in South King County in general. Historically, the folks who live in South King County are more disenfranchised. We do not have as great or regular access to public health. We have had higher rates of COVID and lower rates of vaccination. We've had large outbreaks in our schools and daycares. And it's been a very challenging time for many of us who live here because a lot of folks who live in South King County live in the service industries and have had to work in person and have had to take very real risks the last several years. So I ask you as a team to work together to try to remain professional and to do your absolute best to protect your citizens while that is your job. That's all I had to say. It's grateful to hear everyone else's comments today. I thank you for your time and for your efforts. Like I said, I really do appreciate the work you do. Just hoping to see better rhetoric coming from folks, all of you, in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I have one letter to read.
Okay.
Okay. It says, "Hello, my name is Deborah Osborne, and I've been a resident of Federal Way for nearly 30 years. My husband and I relocated from Seattle to start our family here after finding a nice lot to build our very first home together. Moving to Federal Way was ideal for my family, close to church and to work. I'm proud to say today I'm retired from the Boeing Company after 37 years of service in procurement, where I negotiated and managed multiple long-term contracts. In celebration of Black History Month, I think it is fitting to name a street after John Cona. Mr. Cona and his family were the first African Americans to settle in Federal Way in the 1880s, making significant contributions. He was politically active in Washington before it became a state. Due to his political influence, he was selected Sergeant at Arms for the first Washington State Legislature in 1889 and was a member of the Afro-American League, the predecessor to the NAACP, and helped to successfully lobby for Washington's first public accommodation law. Mr. Cona was an entrepreneur. He purchased a 160-acre farm north of Tacoma, which is now a part of Federal Way. Mr. Cona actively recruited African Americans from other parts of the country to migrate to the Pacific Northwest, including coal miners. And on December 24th, 1889, Mr. Cona and his wife, Mary, donated 40 acres of land, which is now called the Cona Addition, to the city of Tacoma. By 1910, Mr. Kona had established a real estate, mining, investment company, and rental houses in Fairbanks, Alaska. Mr. Kona is a pivotal figure in Fudger Way and is well deserving of this public honor. I would like to see a street in Fudger Way named after Mr. Kona. Thank you, Deborah Osborne.
All right. Is that it?
Yes, Mayor, that's the only letter I have.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who came before the council and submitted either a letter or a digital comment. Okay, we're moving on to consent agenda. These items can be passed all at once, or I'll read all the items and ask if a council member would want an item pulled for separate consideration. Item A for the minutes, February 1st, 2022, regular and special meetings. B, selection process, 2022, amendments to the comprehensive plan. C, authorization to apply for Conservation Futures Tax Levy, CFT grant. D, 2022 asphalt overlay project, approval to award. E, 2021 asphalt overlay project, authorization to increase contract expenditures. F, 2022 citywide storm repair phase 4, approval to bid. G, 2020 citywide storm repair phase 3 project acceptance. H, citywide fiber loop project, 30% presentation. I, 2021 citywide pavement repair project, final acceptance. J, 2020-2021 neighborhood traffic safety NTS program, contract increase. K, Washington State Department of Transportation operations and maintenance agreement for adaptive traffic control system. L, transportation grants funding applications. M, contract increase for concrete beveling services, trip hazard removal contract. N, summer experience and enrichment for kids grants. O, Parks and Recreation Commission 2022 work plan. P, Cummins Incorporated generator maintenance and repair agreement. Council, is there a motion to pull a particular item? Councilmember Doty.
Yes, I'd like to pull item B.
B. Okay, council, any others? All right, Council President Kochmar, do you have a motion with respect to A and then C through P?
Mayor, I move approval of items A and then C through P on the consent agenda for approval.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second for items A and then C through P. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. Item B, Councilmember Doty.
Yes, I wanted to pull this just to make a comment about it. I'm for moving it forward, but as we had tonight, a citizen commented about the development that's going at the old Valleys location down here down the road. This happens to have one piece of property on it that is zoned for single family now, and the applicant is asked to potentially make it multifamily. And I just want to make sure the council all is aware of that. I mean, it's going to go through the process, it's going to go through planning commission, it's not we're voting to do it. But we probably will have a lot of people that come forward that talk about drainage into Muir Lake and all the different things, because it has been zoned for single family. And I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar in case, it's going to come up again. I think it has the light of day to go through the process, the fair process, so that the planning commission and the staff can make recommendations. But I just wanted to make those comments so everybody that wasn't at that meeting understands what we're passing.
Okay, thank you. Council President Kochmar, do you have a motion with respect?
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of item, was there any other discussion?
Oh, I thought we would have some kind of discussion.
Go ahead.
I don't know if there's a discussion. I just wanted to make a place mark so everybody heard, but if you want to.
Okay, was there any other discussion on that item?
Well, Brian Davis had the map up, and I think it would be just interesting to discuss that, since we have had so many emails.
Yeah,
Yes, happy to do that.
Yeah, go ahead and you show what it is so everybody that wasn't at planning commission understands.
So for context, just to harken back to an earlier discussion we had with the Bally's property, how it had gone through the council selection process and then went to the planning commission, and at the planning commission, that's where the sort of the real analysis and work began, and the planning commission pushed back a little because they didn't feel that it was appropriate to move forward as it was proposed. For this proposal tonight, this is step one. So if it moves forward, it by no means approves this proposal in any way. It just says, let's push it to the planning commission so that the staff and the planning commission can have a discussion and analyze it to see if it is appropriate to bring back to the city council for final approval.
Okay. Any other questions for?
Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
Uh,
All right.
Seeing none?
Actually, Deputy Mayor, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So, Mr. Davis, can you tell the public specifically what they can do if they want to discuss this with the council or with staff?
Yes, if they've submitted something already to the city, then they're automatically part of the, they're a party to the matter. When it goes to the planning commission, it will be a hearing in which I believe it's 300 feet within the proposal, I could be wrong, but there's a radius that is measured and notices sent out to all the people that fall within that radius for them to then come to the planning commission and express concerns and say, hey, this is a bad idea, don't give it to the city council, or we're in favor, please recommend that the city council approve it.
So then, just for clarification for the folks who have sent us emails already, those emails are part of the record?
Yeah, we'll put them on the, that they're parties to the record.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just to clarify though, if there has been any ones that you've received that has not been copied to staff, just kind of take note of that and make sure that we get them if they haven't been, staff hasn't been a part of that correspondence.
Okay. Councilor Walsh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I know there's some people here this evening concerned about that very issue, and I just wanted, I'm going to be voting to forward it on for the discussion with the planning commission. However, that I personally have very sincere reservations about it, but it is worthy of further discussion.
All right, thank you. Okay.
And now I have a question.
Yeah. Council President Coachman.
As Jim Grayson has mentioned, when we first incorporated, our city was inundated with apartments from King County and roads that went nowhere. And they would come into, they were the King County, they didn't come here. The developer would say, well, I'm going to build, let's say, 20 units on a property, and gosh darn, by the time they were through the process, we had 150 units on the same piece of property. And that's one of the reasons, Jim will agree, I believe, that's why we incorporated. And so I'm wondering, Mr. Davis, if this property who has been sending out notices to the neighbors saying we're going to build this type of townhouse and this many units on this property, could that change in the process? Could it change to be multifamily in the process?
So the direction from the planning commission was to enter into a development agreement, which is basically a contract between the city and the developer. And depending on what the conditions of that development agreement entail, they could be very specific or broad, depending on what gets approved. It could be very specific, and then it would have to remain in a certain type of housing in perpetuity. It's depending on how the agreement's written.
Okay, so we'll be watching that. Okay, well,
Okay,
thank
do you have
you.
a
Yes, I do, Mayor. I move approval of item B on the consent agenda.
Second. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of passage of B?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passed unanimously. Thank you, Brian. Okay, moving on to item 6, the public hearing. I'll now open the public hearing. This is on item A, Council Bill 812 regarding Title 19 of the Federal Revised Code regarding public transportation facilities. This was postponed from October 19th of last year and also from January 18th of 2022 while work continued. First, we'll have Brian Davis, our Community Development Director, and moonlighting as the interim city administrator.
This is my day job.
Exactly. For a staff report, and then we'll have public comment up to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Brian?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Mayor,
President.
if we just, could we make it clear that this is a public hearing?
I just did.
Okay.
I formally opened it.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for making sure.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council President Coachmore and Deputy Mayor Honda and members of the council. So as the mayor mentioned, this was a matter that was originally brought to the council in October through committee, and was postponed to a future council date, which was a couple council meetings ago, and then we postponed it again to this meeting, to allow staff and Sound Transit to work some flexibilities and more specifics into the proposal. And let me just get into here and hopefully indicate what I'm talking about. So the policy question is, should we amend the code to allow light rail or commuter transit facilities as a permitted use in the commercial enterprise and city center zones? To be clear, I already talked about the first one. So to be clear, the second one, light rail and commuter facilities are currently allowed in the city. They're allowed as what's called essential public facilities, and they're really allowed in any zone. What this does is it narrows that definition down to light rail and commuter rail facilities, in addition to stations specifically within the CE and core zones, which are really the only two stations that we have or will have in the city. And by so doing, we can have this then identify provisions for development, specifically parking. Okay, let's see here. So I mentioned that we added the definitions, light rail or commuter rail transit facility and transit station. And as I mentioned, it's currently allowed as an essential public facility, but it's just to update and clarify that because it's really broad right now. And these are, again, listed in the core zone and the commercial enterprise zone. So parking is the big point here that we're talking about. There's a number of different development regulations, but parking is the key point for this one. And we worked with Sound Transit staff on this for a while. They were great to work with. But the baseline is what it starts at is 500 parking spaces. The Sound Transit Board took action to identify stations throughout their system that they would propose not providing parking at those stations. The idea, twofold, is to encourage transit-oriented development surrounding the stations to get more of a return on their investments so that there's more riders. And then the second one is to reduce costs, because parking is expensive. We did not like that action. The city did not want a Tacoma Dome link extension station at 352nd that didn't have parking. We did not feel it was appropriate to eliminate parking at that future station, considering if you look at our current station and the parking situation there, it did make a lot of sense to approve a brand new transit facility and not have parking there. Okay, so we coordinated with their staff to look at innovative ways to meet both needs. You know, they're saying we can't provide parking. We said you need to provide parking, so let's sit together and see how we can make this work. So the baseline is 500 spaces, but then we identified 4 key points in which we believe that both sides would get what they want. One is that they could in fact get a reduction if they turned in a study that identified, and this could be done at any point in time. So if it's done right now, it's likely going to show that parking is needed. If it's done 20 years from now, maybe they'll say that parking is not needed as much. So it's really a snapshot in time of when the study is done, which will then project both current and future parking needs, and identify if there's an appropriate amount of reduction that could be acceptable to the 500 space parking requirement. The second idea is phasing, that there could be a scenario in which not all of the parking would need to be provided up front and could be phased over time as development occurs around the station and the need increases. That could be built into a phasing arrangement or agreement between the city and Sound Transit. Structure requirements. Again, the baseline is 500 spaces, and it's got to be structured. We did work in a provision where structured, the requirement could be exempt, where it's not practical to put in structured parking based on future and current uses. One example, and I don't have a diagram here, but one of the current alignments for the 352nd station has the guideway coming along the west side of Pack Highway down to the station at 352nd. But there's a space underneath the guideway for quite a distance. It wouldn't make sense to require structured parking there because the guideway's, at most 30 feet, I believe there, if not more. So you couldn't get a structure under there. And so in that case, we would say, yes, surface parking is acceptable. And then if there's a future use that we anticipate would be right for redevelopment, then we wouldn't, at that time, build a parking structure on that parcel. So there's different ways in which there could be ways to get to the number of parking units that we're looking for without it all being in a structure. And then finally, shared parking. There could be multiple opportunities, if it's done right, for shared parking provisions, especially as commuting habits change over time and time of day, and shuttle provisions to maybe lots that we currently have that are being underutilized. That could be a partnership in which those lots get used more, and then the shuttle could then, if it's run frequently enough, then get them to the light rail station. So those are the big four provisions that we worked on with Sound Transit staff. It was, I have to say, I have worked with Sound Transit for several years, and this was a collaborative effort, and I have to say that I think both sides walk away with this in a positive direction, and so we're recommending approval, and we appreciate their cooperation. Your options are to adopt the ordinance as proposed, or do not approve it and provide direction.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Brian, and thank you to you and your staff. And also, I meet regularly with the CEO of Sound Transit, Peter Rogoff, and he provided some very insightful, as this was coming up, I think we were essentially anticipating being a rock in the river and saying, you absolutely have to put this here. I think that would have put the entire station in jeopardy, and especially with the financial situation with Sound Transit. I think we ran the risk, if we had played too much hardball with Sound Transit, of having them just essentially bypass this location, which they're in the process of building what I refer to as 100-year infrastructure. And so that would have been a disastrous outcome. And he very candidly said, you probably want to find, there's probably a middle ground here. So we owe Peter Rogoff and your staff and their staff a big thank you for being able to find a middle course. With that, Deputy Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So for the 500 parking spots, does that pertain to the current station being built downtown?
If it were built today, that would be the baseline. And if either Sound Transit or the city, for that matter, felt that was either too much or not enough, then we would then do a study accordingly to justify a different number.
So the garage being built for the downtown station, does it have 500, and the new garage, does it have 500 spots?
The expanded portion?
Right.
It'll be 400, I believe. Yeah, 400.
So then you're adding the existing spots to come up with your 500.
Well, that one's, I believe that one's been permitted, if I'm not mistaken, or been vetted through the NEPA process.
It was done through NEPA prior to this, and it's approximately 400 spaces in the garage and then another 100 surface spaces to get to a total of 500, but it's not 500 in the garage extension.
Okay.
So all said, that station upon completion will have approximately 1,600 spaces between what's there today and being built.
Okay, awesome. And for this one, for the second light rail station, excuse me, in Federal Way, so the garage won't be there when this opens, probably. And I understand from talking with the mayor that it'll be built within 10 years. Is that?
Yeah, I can't speak to when exactly. It could be built on day zero. We don't know yet. We haven't had that discussion yet. That's part of that they need to establish, okay, we're working with 500, and then they do the study to tell us what exactly the number is, and then when those would be constructed. So it may not be, to your point, may not be right away, but as to your question, when that will be, I can't answer at this point.
So, but we do have we're not going to let this go indefinitely, that they just aren't going to build the garage. We do have some time of a timeline for them, right?
Let's have EJ, can you, and I know that it's important for people to realize that we have a liaison. Can you, Ryan Medlin, can you talk about our expectations with Sound Transit with regard to that, the garage at this location?
Sure. So there's two locations. My comments earlier were about the 320th location. To answer your first, I think, Deputy Mayor, this is more for the audience than for you, the first part. So my comments were for the 320th station that's under construction currently. The second station, which is the one Brian's talking about, and I think your question is focused around, is the South Federal Way Station, which will tentatively be somewhere around 352nd to 356. Part of the NEPA process that they're going through right now is to identify a final location. That station, the ballot measure that was passed, the ST3 ballot measure, did account for a 500 space parking garage at that location. The board action that Brian referenced earlier postponed that. It did not cancel it. It pushed it out for up to 10 years. So as part of what the revised code that community development developed says, they have to submit as part of their project plan, a plan demonstrating and documenting to the city when that happens, when it'll occur, the milestones in the timeline. So that'll ultimately, when they get to that point in the process, under this code, that'll become a requirement that they have to meet as part of their permitting. So right now, they've told us it will push out to a maximum of 10 years, but the defined timeline is something that'll be under, assuming this code amendment passes, will become a requirement that it actually gets documented before they get permits.
And when do we expect that station to open?
That's a little bit of a moving target because of COVID. Right now, it's slated for 2034.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh?
Yes. So you say that part of the will be determined by a study. Is that study done by Sound Transit?
It'll be, so it'll be scoped out between Sound Transit staff and city staff. So we'll agree to the scope before they turn their engineer loose on doing the study.
Okay.
But yes, they would pay for the study and have it done.
Okay. But we could, would we have an assurance that the study wasn't, I mean, sometimes it'll be a study that before the study's ever done, the conclusion is already determined.
Yes. We would have an opportunity to review, our staff would review it, and make sure it's consistent with our standards and what we want out of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Seffa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask about disabled parking spots. A lot of times, especially during commute hours, early in the morning, you can't find parking. And I don't know what the percentage is, but is there any way we could even require for additional parking stalls?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Disabled parking.
Oh, to have more of them?
Correct. And could that be spelled out also in the document?
That could be part of the, not a part of this code amendment, we could have a part of the study and to make sure that it has the appropriate amount, and we can, again, as I mentioned before, we could make sure it's something that we are comfortable with and, potentially ask for more accessible parking than is normally required.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
second that.
Yeah.
Right, okay, great. All right, council, any other questions? Thank you, Brian, stay close. Is there any public comment on this, Stephanie?
No, Mayor, I don't have anyone signed up.
Okay. And Councilmember Dovey, will you make, can you make a motion?
Seeing that there's no public comment, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those, is there any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed. Action on this will take place under 8A, under ordinances. All right, thank you, Brian. Council business, downtown revitalization plan discussion. Brian, you're the man of the night. Staff report, our CD director, Brian Davis.
Okay, just getting warmed up.
Exactly.
So this is we had a discussion at the last council meeting about downtown revitalization, in which we talked about a broad range of things. We're going to separate it out tonight in two different agenda items. One is just downtown in general. The second one after this will be specific to the TC3 property RFP proposal. So again, for reference, the city center, both the core and frame zones are about 400 acres. Map of it there. And this is a bit of a soft policy question. It's basically saying, should we continue the discussion? Because based on the last meeting, there was a clear indication from the council that you wanted to discuss this at length, and it wasn't just going to be one meeting. So this policy question is to continue that, whether it be at the council or committee level. We want to hear what you have to say and make sure we're headed in the right direction. Okay, so there are a number of factors at play, and one is three big property owners. One is us, the city. This right here is the Performing Arts Center. This is the former Target property. We own this block, basically. And the redevelopment, the potential redevelopment of this is these two properties here, the former Target and this one. In the next presentation, I'm also going to recommend that as part of that RFP process that we include the property, or to the parking lot to the north, just as part of an entire look at what we have to deal with for that area. And of course, we'd have to make sure that parking is accommodated for the Performing Arts Center. So we're not proposing to do that, take any parking away than what's required. Okay, so being one of the major property owners is a major advantage to us in looking at downtown. The second one is Sound Transit. Obviously, we've talked about that one. This is the new station, going to be about right here. And they own basically this whole block. And when they're done with the station, then they will surplus the remaining portion of the property that they do not need. So that will also be a major redevelopment happening in downtown. And the third is the mall. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we've had several discussions with them about a development agreement and ways in which both parties could benefit. And they are currently at the drawing table trying to come up with something that they've come to us a couple times with proposals. We've kind of pushed back because we looked at what they had to say, and we didn't really see any public benefit about what they were proposing. So we've pushed back a little bit on them with some of their proposals, because really they were just asking a development agreement to get out of development standards. So we believe this is a really this is a huge potential for our downtown, and we believe that in partnership with the property owner that this could be something just tremendous for the city. So these three are the major property owners for what we're looking at downtown. So as far as projects go, specifically with mobility, I mentioned number one is the light rail station. I mentioned that earlier. Number two is the city center access project, which if some of you have been on the council for a while, this is a large and very important process or project for the city. It's a multi-layered project. It involves a future crossing of I-5 on 324th. It looks at modifying the 320th interchange to that takes into consideration a crossing at 324th and how those two overpasses interact with each other. Road improvements on 23rd, the street here, down to 324th. There's a couple of roundabouts on 324th as well. Restriping the HOV lanes on 320th and adding shared use paths to connect to the BPA trail. So the city center access project, this number two, is one that we've invested a lot into it, and we are continuing to invest a lot into it because it is so important for our core part of the city. Number 3 is 314th improvements, sidewalks and streetlights. That will help, especially since we're the neighboring property owner, or the abutting property owner, so that will be help with, anytime there's streetscape improvements or public improvements, it always helps with the neighboring property. So that's another one. So 4 and 5, right here at 21st and 320th, we talked a little bit about, and we'll get into a little bit. But it's basically what to do with this intersection, because right now it's scheduled for a signalized crossing. It's currently not unsignalized. So one of the things that we pitched to the council at the last meeting was the idea that as you travel south on 21st, that the grade is, as you're approaching 320th, the grade is above 320th, and so you could continue on 21st at that same grade, and with just a slight, in theory, a slight dip of 320th, you could create a grade-separated crossing for the north side and south side of 320th, which right now, it's all at grade, and it's really hard to get any kind of connection from a non-motorized standpoint between the north side of 320th and the south side of 320th. And so having that crossing there would really open up possibilities for this 21st Avenue corridor from the city's property up here to Sound Transit's redeveloping property here to the mall without having to cross 320th. Now, at this point, we don't even know if it'll work. There could be groundwater issues. There could be a number of other issues that just kill the idea. But what we want to do is at least explore it to see if it's feasible. And that does require funds to do that. It's not something that we can do in-house, so that is an investment on the city's part to explore that possibility. But we think it's worth it. We think it's worth making efforts to make our downtown more connected than it is. And it really would, like I mentioned earlier, since we're dealing with so few property owners, that's a real advantage when we're talking about redevelopment. If all of these properties were individually owned, it'd be really hard to coordinate everyone together and get the same vision. But we're talking about 3 major property owners for this part of downtown. So there's that. So mayor's recommendation. We propose another study session in March or April, or refer it to the land use committee for discussion. And there could be other topics, but at minimum, we would want direction on should immediate planning efforts focus on the blocks proximate to light rail station, which I mentioned earlier, and should the city utilize the current budget appropriation for downtown and supplement it to move forward with looking at what we're calling the 320th dip, which is that 21st Avenue crossing with a dip of 320th to make that happen. So happy to have discussion tonight, as well as with this recommendation, future discussion. And I believe that is it, which it is. So I will stop sharing.
Council, any questions at this point? The next item is going to be the TC3 site. Councilmember Norton?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. What will be the cost of the study for I know you'd already told us that at the last meeting, I didn't write it down. The 320th dip, what's the cost for the study on that?
So I believe it was just north of 200 is my recollection. EJ probably has a better.
I think it was 250.
250, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Dovey?
The question I have is when you talk about a study session, I mean, we're all here studying, but can we have a study session where we bring in Sound Transit and the mall? So we're not in a vacuum and really find out if they're part of what our vision is and what their vision is, so we can collectively plan instead of this is what we think we should do? Would that be possible?
That's, we'd have to see. I think Sound Transit would be would be willing. I don't know if the mall would want to have that in an open, be an open meeting at that point with minutes being taken, so I don't know if they would want all their cards on the table in an open meeting. But we can ask.
Because one of the things, if we're talking about downtown that I think is important, is we have this surplus property that we don't know what it's gonna be for Sound Transit when they're done. And if we're gonna be doing planning, we should be having those kind of discussions, what's gonna happen to it, because that's gonna be key in our planning on whatever we do. And maybe that's too premature, but, knowing what's going on is always better before you make your decision.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda?
No, thank you. So is it possible at some time to have a discussion before the study session on the mall redevelopment and what they'd like to do? It could be with 2 or 3 council members or whoever's interested on the council, but
It's difficult to speak for them. I can just tell you what they've proposed, but I don't know if that's still current, to be honest. So I can't speak to their current mindset. What they have proposed is mixed use, ground floor retail, and 5/1 residential, with Amazon and Target remaining.
how many acres is their property? It's a lot.
It is, yeah. Less than 400.
Less than 400. Well, it would just be, I think, as a council, at least as a council member, I've heard, for the last year, the mall redevelopment, but I haven't, and I've heard the idea that you just mentioned, but nothing substantial, that it would be nice to know as a council, what's going on, so that we can have something in a vision of what
Yeah.
they would like to do, and does it fit with our vision?
Yes, and I think staff shares the same sentiment, is that we would like to know, because it seemed like many of the proposals that they were giving us were just, like I said, it's Amazon and Target, and then everything else was redeveloped with ground floor retail, and then 501 residential with parking all the way around. I mean, the footprint really didn't change, and so we wanted something that and they were looking for waivers of all kinds of public improvements, and so we felt that we weren't really getting anything out of their proposal by waiving all these improvements to get something that we didn't want. So it was kind of like a double negative.
I would like to see no above-ground parking in that area. Right now, you look downtown and it's a sea of parking lots. And I know that's expensive, but like the building across the street, their first level is parking, and you don't really notice it until you're really staring at it. But if we could even do something like that, then we're not going to be staring at hundreds of cars, and they'd even have more land to develop, so.
Thank you. First, a real quick follow-up with Councilmember Dovey and then the Councilmember Walsh.
Oh, yeah, just one more thing that, based on Deputy Mayor Honda's saying, we've had this presentation of this great walkway level and a bridge underneath, and unless you know what the mall's gonna do, I mean, we might have a bridge to nowhere or a tunnel to nowhere. So we need to know what they're doing. But I was gonna comment, I just drove down this morning Reith Road for the first time in a long time, and Kent's got this huge thing going on down that road by the golf course that used to be like, you didn't want to get out of your car at times. And those are the type of things that this mall or whatever we're talking about could happen, and we need in Federal Way. So I just think it's really important that the mall at least says, here's what we're thinking, and then we can make decisions based on best guesses.
Okay, well, we'll reach out to Merlon Geyer. We've had ongoing discussions, and I think, we presented them with an idea of gridding the roads out and really having much more of a kind of a Main Street feel in that downtown core and what's referred to as the CBD, the Central Business District. But we'll make the invitation and we'll see what they say. Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, and I have those same concerns regarding the mall, but also with Sound Transit, with the surplus properties. I mean, if they stick to the idea of 80% low-income housing, once again, I mean, we have severe challenges for the whole area. And if it's 80% low-income housing, then some of these other things really don't matter anyway. So we need to be able to be working with Sound Transit and some way mitigating that 80% low-income housing requirement.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Norton?
I have a couple questions. So when they were talking about the multi-use residential building, how many units did they even say? Like, is it?
The mall?
Yeah, was it 150, 500 units?
It was like 600.
600, okay. And then,
Or more.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, the density.
I own
Sorry, go ahead.
I own a construction cleaning company, so I clean those. So I've seen what they can do, and I've also seen, like, down in Ruston, the way they developed that was beautiful, and what they did, it's incredible. I went and visited a friend's son on the 4th of July, and I was really impressed with that design. So I could see what they could do with, basically nothing, and turn it into a really nice area to go visit and live, and people work there and everything. Also, have they considered, because a lot of the buildings that I clean, they install underground parking too. So instead of making a parking structure, you could ask them to dig a hole under the building. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yep. All right, thank you. Okay, all right, so we've got another item on, which is the more pressing. So we'll bring this back. We'll communicate with the agenda-setting team. We'll reach out to both Merlon Geyer, the mall ownership, as well as Sound Transit, and invite them and we'll relay their answer. Okay, item B, which is the application for request for proposal for Town Center 3, the former Target property. Brian?
Okay, so this is specifically the TC3 property policy question is, should we do an RFP to develop or get development proposals for the TC3 property? So the funds for this RFP have already been budgeted. And there is, the council asked questions about the debt of the property. Currently, the debt is about $5 million that the city is currently paying back. We purchased it in 2014 for the purpose of catalyzing redevelopment in the city's downtown, and we have done that with, in part with the PAC and the steps. And so we're looking to take the next steps on this property. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the TC3, the Town Center 3 properties, Town Center 1 was the PAC, Town Center 2 was the park, Town Center 3 is the Target, Town Center 4 is this little grassy strip that's going to be the parking garage expansion with the light rail station coming in. So when I say TC3, it's the old Target property. We recommend including this part of the PAC as part of the study. Again, not, to be clear, we're not proposing taking away parking for the PAC because we can't do that. But in terms of identifying the highest and best use for the surface surrounding the Performing Arts Center, that we're proposing to include that. So all told, it's 8.7 acres. And options are proceed with the RFP or do not issue it and provide additional direction.
All right. Council, any questions? This is time for discussion. Deputy Mayor Honda?
So what would the RFP cost to develop it and get it out?
The cost for the RFP or development, I'm sorry?
What would it cost to get the RFP out to?
I'm sorry, it's already been budgeted, so I've kind of written it off in my mind.
All right. And how long would it take you to develop it and get it out to the public?
Not long.
Not long?
No.
A week?
We'd need to run it through law and get it, so probably a little bit more than a week.
So how long would you have it out for?
It'd be for something like this to be a typical request for proposal process, I don't know what we've identified, but it can be anywhere from a month to, 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, I do think it's important that we do this. We've had this property for many, many years, and ideas have been floated, and we need to either do something with it, or we need to find out if we can sell it and what it's worth to sell. So I think it's important that we go forward with this.
Okay. So let's do this in order. Councilmember Cephedos will be first, then we'll do a council. Okay, okay. Then Councilmember Dovey, and then Council President Kochmar. Councilmember Cephedos?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Brian. So if we're considering north of the PAC, the parking lot, we're going to be losing parking, or is
No,
underground going to be part of the
No,
consideration?
so the idea would be identify the highest and best use of all that property, which would have to it would have to consider the parking requirements for the PAC. And ideally, it would even take into consideration the parking that we've accounted for the PAC that is shared with non-city properties right now. So this would be an opportunity to potentially get all of the required parking for the PAC in one site as part of this analysis.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, thank you. How do I say this without sounding really bad? We just had a presentation talking about Sound Transit, our property in the mall, and we're saying, hey, we need to study it and let's look at it as a whole. And now we're saying, let's run to an RFP. Granted, I know it's been worked on a long time, but what's the rush? I mean, either we got to sell it or make something happen, I get that, but we just got talking about having another meeting to look at the whole picture instead of just one piece, and what am I missing? I mean,
Okay,
shouldn't we
so-
do it all at the same time?
I can, I was very, obviously, I led the charge 8 years ago to purchase the property, 7 years ago to purchase the property. The idea is, obviously, what we did not want to occur, and what we knew was about to occur was foreign investment was essentially going to come in, grab that, probably land bank it, or it was going to turn into, some, not the highest and best use, especially right next to a PAC that we're building for $30 million.
And I appreciate that, and I think that was a wise thing to do.
Thank you.
I'm just
All right, we'll
just so you
start
know.
there. Okay.
I just want to talk about,
Okay.
we're talking about
Then why-
today or 2 weeks or three, I mean, we're not talking a long time to look at the whole picture, but okay.
Okay, so I would say the other issue is that for the past 6 years, we were I want to give everybody kind of just a very quick history lesson of why it's taken us from 14 to now. The individual that owns the property immediately to the north, where the Gene Juarez Salon is and that development, they owned an easement, an operating easement, a restrictive covenant on that property that we purchased. Now, they also owned the same thing for the PAC. And when we built the PAC, they essentially sold us that, or cleared the easement for about $300,000. Now, fast forward to when we bought the land and we needed to get that operating easement cleared, they wanted $5 million for it. And so, for the easement, just the easement. So we said, no, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. And so we were in deadlock for years until I finally had to get council authorization to condemn the easement. And then we took them to court to get the fair market value. Now, just a history lesson here is very important because I want to make sure everybody understands. So when we made that decision, we had to be prepared not to be able to use that for essentially private use. Once we made the decision to potentially condemn that easement, we were really restricted at that moment to using it for just public use, some sort of city use. But after a certain number of years and the recalcitrance by or the unwillingness of the owner of that property and the owner of that easement to deal with us, we had no option but to just condemn it. But during the course of that process, after we sued, they got reasonable, we came to a resolution, and now we can use it for anything we want. But we've been sitting on this property for years. I just want to make sure the history is clear here. So I think actually, Councilmember Dovey, that portion, Town Center 3, is discrete and separate enough essentially what I have always thought, and it's up to the council on how you want to proceed, but my suggestion is to test the market and to see what's out there and just put it out there. We've got an idea of what we want. The RFP, the request for proposals, has a certain amount of guidelines on what we were looking for, and it puts us in a position in which we could say yay or nay. If we put it out and I think the deputy mayor's questions were well-founded, what if we don't get anything back? Then I think we kind of go back to the drawing board. But when we put this out for requests for proposals, we could get all kinds of responses. So it's really sort of testing the market, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, letting me be long-winded, you guys. I'm trying to do a lot less of that. Okay, Council President Coach Mark.
Well, you answered some of my questions already, Mayor. Thank you. So, the amount of money that we have expended on this property, including the interest over the years, has been phenomenal for our city. And so I think it's wise for us to move forward and not waste any more money, my opinion. But Mr. Davis, when you go for your request for proposal, do you target certain developers, or do you just put it out like in the Journal of Commerce? How do you do your RFP?
Yes, we would, there's procedures that we would follow to
But do you
to make
send it, do you also send it to certain developers? In other words, do you pick developers to send it to?
So it's a prescribed process, so that's what we follow, and it's in the interest of being fair to everyone, and, we announce it. There could be some where maybe we didn't see anything from them, and we wanted to make sure that they heard about it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's sure, no problem. But also in the RFP, the mayor has just said that there would be some ideas or suggestions. I'm wondering what some of those suggestions would be. For example, are you going to suggest a city hall in this RFP? I would be against that. I just want to know if that's going to be one of the suggestions.
Yeah, it's a great policy question from this body. I also think as part of, I think it should be at least an option to look at, in most vibrant downtowns, that there's a civic center, and we currently don't have that other than the Performing Arts Center. A lot of people said that as great as this building is, it's hard to find, hard to get to, and so they want the idea of helping make it more accessible to everyday residents. So that's the
Right,
argument
but
for that.
they're not going to build our city hall. We would
No.
end up having to build it.
No, but to the RFP, they would look at that and say, what is the best use of city-owned property in downtown? That's one of the options that they would look at. It's not to say that they would recommend that, but that's certainly a consideration they would analyze.
So at some point after you receive your answers, you're going to come back to council. Would it go to land use at that point, or where? With your RFPs?
Yeah, this is we could either go through committee or have a study session with the council if it's important enough to have everyone take a look at it.
And recall, if you will, when you were on the council previously, remember when we had that with what's now Town Square Park, we had a big presentation in regard to there would likely be a big, not a study session, but a
Oh, I
presentation.
remember, totally.
Yeah. And
What-
it really came down to whether they were going to do those two towers or the Steel Lake Village, and
I remember, totally. We had, just for your citizen input, we had discussed, and I'm talking, my goodness, 2008, 2006, we had discussed building 4 buildings. That's a 4-acre park, a 4-acre piece of property. And we had discussed 4 buildings surrounding a 1-acre park, where your Town Square Park is right now, of varying heights. And we had a Canadian developer who was, at that time, going to come in and develop the different buildings. It would be retail at the bottom, office, and there would be some, hopefully, condos in the mix, with one particular portion having a restaurant at the top. And if you, I believe, was it Helen that came to the podium and talked about a drone footage? At that point, we did do a drone footage. And above 12 stories, you have a view of the entire downtown, all the way to downtown Seattle and the mountain. And at that point, above 8 stories, you are above the Bonneville power lines. If you were at the top of the transit garage, that's 5 stories. You would be looking at the power lines. But above 8 stories, the power lines are no longer in your sight of the mountain. So above 8 stories and above, you have a fabulous view. You know, how tall would those buildings go? I can tell you it'd be very stark for some of our citizens to see a 20-story building, let's say. So it might be better to go with a 10-story building so it isn't such a big change for our citizens. But we had discussed having underground parking, and at that point you'd have to have stormwater management. And then in the park between all those 4 buildings, we had talked about putting in a child care center in the area, plus a playground and a place for an open air fireplace and a place to gather on a fountain. Would have been a lot in a 1 acre, but we were trying to do that. And then have pedestrian walkways all the way through there over to the mall. And so that was one of our views at the downtown at that time. And the Center Plaza, that strip mall in between there, would have become numerous retail, like places where you could go and coffee or whatever. So that was a vision at the time. So I hope that we get some kind of a vision similar to that. That would be, you know, gathering places and places where people, as many of our citizens already said, we want to have a place where we can get livable wages, a place where we can live, a place where we can just walk to work, park, but also some nightlife. We have no nightlife in this community. It's dead. We need to have something for our millennials, for our kids to attract here. So good luck, Mr. Dovey. You have a big...
We were just saying we have a city council, it's nightlife.
Exactly. Okay, so
Thank you.
We'll go Deputy Mayor Honda, then Councilmember Norton, then Councilmember Walsh.
Okay, thank you. So I've been asked by folks here in the city, when the PAC property was purchased and the state gave us the money to purchase it, the covenants were bought out. But when the Target property was purchased, the covenants weren't bought out. Is there a reason that that happened that way?
Yeah, we were, in order, there was a foreign investor that, actually, the city of Federal Way hired, so, see, if people know in land, when government's involved in land acquisition, oftentimes the price gets elevated. And so the city of Federal Way hired someone independently to scout out that property. We found out, and I think there was a long article when all this occurred back in 2014. So there was a foreign investor, and we knew that a lot of money was coming out of China before a particular deadline occurred. And a lot of properties were being bought up on the I-5 and the 405 corridor. We actually, by the time we got set up and tried to put in an offer, and that company that we're working with to do so on our behalf, somebody was already in the #1 position. And so we had missed it. And so the individual, the foreign investor, was lined up, was in the #1 position. And we were literally waiting for them to sort of move out of that position, get out of the way. And as soon as they got out of the way, we bought it. And we did so knowing that there was a potential risk of that. But we had to move at that moment. Otherwise, one of the things that I think has really hampered the development of our downtown is decades-long land banking, especially in the downtown core, where people held on to property for generations and then passed it on. And so you've got really the problem with our downtown, which is unlike other downtowns, with either Olympia or Auburn or some of those with the classic downtown, is that we've got these super blocks that really, that's why you don't really have the key development in our downtown. So when we developed, as soon as the opportunity came, I had to make a decision, and the council agreed, buy the land as soon as we had the opportunity. But that, I think it was more situational. And had we not acted, then we could have lost it, and then lost it for who knows when. It's a great question, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so I think we had Councilmember Norton.
Yes. Is one of the possibilities for the RFP for a developer to just buy it and take it off our hands? Because we're a city, we're not a developer.
Yeah, it'll identify what will be considered the highest and best use or the best development scenario, and then the next steps to achieve that, one of which may be selling the property.
And so when you're saying, because when it says RFP, that could also mean that a developer would come in and build the building for a price, and they would, manage it, or it's just up to them? What are the parameters? Is that listed if I click on that online? Is that on there? Because I didn't click on this. This is one of the things I didn't read, so.
No, that's fine. So, yeah, we're basically going to pay someone to look at the property and look at the surrounding uses and identify, based on its location and the current ownership, what is the best use for the property, and take all those factors into consideration, take the feedback that we've heard here tonight, look at the existing policies on city development documents, look at historic building trends, and then come back to the city and say, this is based on all this feedback and data that we've looked at, this is what we believe is the best use of the property. And again, that could be recommending that all or a portion gets sold off, or that the city retain all of it for some larger public purpose.
So the RFP is for a company to come and do a study?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Wall.
Okay, well, we've been talking a lot about the upside of doing an RFP. Other than just the actual expense of it, is there any downside in doing an RFP?
Great question.
I would say no, and to Councilmember Dobie's point before, I would respectfully disagree that we have time. I think we're running out of time to do this, because the Sound Transit property, they're doing this right now with their property. So they're gonna come back with a result that identifies what they're gonna do with their property, which may then generate other nearby property owners to do something else with their property. And then if we don't have like a unified decision on our own property, then we'll be trying to play catch up with how the downtown is redeveloping, and we're a major property owner. So I think we need to move on this soon. And to your question, no, I don't think there's a downside at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Because ultimately, we do have to come back to the council for any action. It's not that this somehow authorizes some plan or development. We have to come back to you for any kind of action on the property.
Councilmember Dovey.
I guess I have one more question, because you just said something that made me think different. So we're asking for an RFP for somebody to tell us what to do with the property, instead of an RFP what somebody wants to buy it for and do with it. Is that, did I miss something?
It identifies potential redevelopment scenarios for the property while we own the property, while we're in control of that development.
Right, but if somebody's gonna, I mean, I've been around a lot of property and a lot of development in my lifetime. People that want to build something usually want to build what they want to build, not what we tell them they want to build. So that's why I'm curious, an RFP to find out what we want to build may not match up with what a developer wants to build. So, I mean, I'm
Sure.
okay with, if we want to study it and spend the money, because it's already been allocated, but generally in the business world that I've been in, you say, I got this piece of land, who wants to tell me what they want to build on it and how much they want to pay to build it? Not, we tell them what we want, and then you go, because we're not going to finance it, so.
Yeah, I think the counter argument is that, again, we are the owners, and so if there is a development scenario that we want, we can ensure that whoever purchases or develops the property is consistent with what we want. That's, that people often bring up, is there any way that we can look at the Sound Transit property and get what we want? Well, we don't own the property. The cities like Bellevue, they own property that they then lease to Sound Transit to do their station and construction, and then when Sound Transit's done, the city has the property back, but, they have way more money than us to do that.
Okay. Councilmember Dovey, do you have a motion?
Yeah.
As painful as this is?
It's a painful motion.
All right.
But I will move that the city request for proposals for the city-owned TC Property 3 to facilitate the redevelopment of the site.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Stephanie?
Councilmember Safadasan?
Aye.
Councilmember Norton?
Nay.
Councilmember Tran?
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh?
Aye.
Councilmember Dovey?
Nay.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Aye.
Council President Kochmar?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. Great discussion. All right, monetary retention incentive for city employees. Brian Davis, you're on a roll.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Council members, excuse me.
Actually, I think this may take a few minutes. Can we break for 10?
Oh, yes.
Let's,
You don't
Yeah.
need our permission, we can do it.
okay, all right, you guys. Hey, I'm gonna put on the timer. Let's make sure it's just 10, okay? And, I'll start right now. Timer. All right, we are in recess for 10 minutes. We'll resume at 8:35 sharp.
Oh, that's my personal number, that's why.
Oh,
I usually use my business number when I call you. I just thought it was funny.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Brian?
Okay. This is a proposal for monetary retention incentive for city employees. This is something that started with the police department and then is now expanded to all city employees. Oops, I just hit the wrong button. My apologies. Okay, so I'm going to start with the police and recent trends in police workforce. Since June 2020, there's been a decline across the country in law enforcement selection pool, and since June of last year, there's a decline across Washington state in law enforcement selection pool. We believe fewer people are willing to subject themselves to the socio-political rigors and the personal legal risks of policing as reasons for that. These factors compound law enforcement officers having daily close contact with high-risk population during the COVID pandemic. For retention incentive as a whole for all city employees, reasons for that include special hazards to public employees during COVID pandemic. We're at a higher risk of, typically a higher risk of exposure since we deal with the public so much. Daily potential exposures create a higher risk of taking COVID home to loved ones before symptoms occur in the employee. National state COVID stay-at-home incentives reduced available workforce in all sectors. Employee retention has been a consistent and expensive issue for the city. Case in point, last year we had double the amount of separations that we normally experience, which are high to begin with. And then increase in wage competition everywhere is luring city employees away from public service for higher wages elsewhere. That's part of the reason why I am doing every presentation tonight, because a lot of my employees have been, well, one of my employees was lured away to another jurisdiction. So recommendation is that for personnel that started with the city in July of 2022, that the city would pay a monetary retention incentive in the amount of 2.5% of the employee's base salary if they're still employed at the end of the year. For personnel, and same thing for next year, if they're employed on January 1st, 2023, the city will pay a monetary retention incentive in the amount, again, of 2.5% of the employee's base salary if the employee is still employed with no separation as of December 1st of that year. So in order to be eligible, they have to work a minimum of 1,250 hours. Basically be a regular employee, full-time or part-time, but those hours define what part-time, what the eligible part-time employees would be. And then the monetary retention incentive is based solely on the employee's base salary. It doesn't include any kind of overtime or specialty pay or other compensation. So it's just the base pay that the percentage is based on. And then the applicable incentive pay will be paid to the qualifying employee in the last pay period of the year, of the qualifying year. Again, this started with the police and was with discussions we felt in the interest of fairness, we are recommending that it be included for all city employees. And to go back to our previous discussion in the special session, we're proposing that this come out of ARPA funds. There was a line item in the list that we talked about earlier. It said, I think it said PD retention. That's actually, it should read just retention incentive pay for all city employees. So that 1.5 million was not just for police, that's for all city employees. And that's broken down to basically $773,410 for 2022, and doubled that, that's where we get the 1.5 million. Now there'd be a slight difference if we adjust it after wage increases from year to year, but that gets us close. That's option one. That's what's recommended. Option two is just for the police department. For the first year cost, it's projected to be $368,771, with a breakdown between commissioned and civilian staff. And then the two-year cost is $737,542 plus wage increase differentials in 2023. And again, the recommendation is number 1. Questions?
Council, any questions? Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, thank you for your presentation. When I look at this proposal, I do want to support it, but I'm really struggling with the decision, with my decision. And it's not because I don't want to support city staff, because I do. I mean, I said it many times. But my concern is that 4 years ago, we raised taxes in this city, right, with the Lake Haven utilities, so that we can bring in about $1 million more into the city. So that's one time we did the kind of tax increase for the people in the city. And then shortly after that, when we rewrite the contract with Waste Management, there's another increase that the resident in the city have to pay extra. So that 2 times that we basically ask people in the city to pay more. And then when I look at the total city budget, as of December of 2021, we still owe about $29.6 million in total debt for our city. So almost $30 million we still have to pay back, right? And the fourth thing is, during this COVID time, we know that families, especially the elderly, single mom or single dad, are struggling, try to keep food on the table. And here we are talking about spending $1.5 million to reward our city employees. I'm really struggling with that. I do want to support our staff because I know they work hard. We all work hard during this pandemic. But my question is this the right time to spend $1.5 million knowing that we should tax them twice, increase that tax twice? We have $30 million in debt, and families are struggling to keep food on the table. So, thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to answer that?
Would you please?
So, thank you, Councilmember Tran, from those concerns. I would ask that you look at it a little bit differently, and that is that, and this is, I guess, a frank discussion that I can now have in this position, that the council priorities in the past has been, what projects do we want to do? And let's get those funded first. And then let's see what's left over for basic city operations. And in that process, city staff has repeatedly been, we're constantly trying to catch up with the rest of the market. We're constantly under. We made a big adjustment last year for COLA. That's below what every other city did. So I'm not saying that it's not appreciated, but it's in trying to retain city employees, it's simply, we're constantly playing catch up. So what I would ask is that the perspective that you take is, what is the basic operational cost of the city first, and then identify what projects we can build on top of that. And this proposal helps bring back some of that lost operational expense that has been neglected for a time.
Okay. Councilmember Dovey, then Councilmember Walsh, then Council President Coachman. And then-
So this money, I just want to make sure we had this earlier discussion, is coming from ARPA,
This
correct?
proposal, yeah, hasn't come from ARPA.
And so, as I think through it, and I agree with my colleague here on people are struggling and we need to do a lot of things. I do believe, though, that if we don't retain our staff, we won't be able to help the people in the city that we want to help, because we won't have the knowledge and the infrastructure and the people that can carry out the mission that we're supposed to do, and what you and I are both concerned about. So, being that this is ARPA money, and it's for the benefit of our people of the city of the whole, we need to have a staff that is engaged, which they are, I'm not saying they're not, but they know that they're appreciated and they can actually work to do the things that we're going to ask them to do, because it's going to be totally different than we've ever had in the past. We just made it through COVID. Who knows where it's going to go? We got an economy that's challenging. We're going to demand, as a council, a lot of things from our staff to perform to help our people and our citizens in this community to help with rent, make it through the rough times, be able to go to a community center, be able to drive on the roads. I mean, we're going to be asking a lot of things, and I agree with you on the debt piece of it. I mean, I think we should be looking at taking our reserve fund and paying off our debt so we're debt-free. I mean, instead of investing it for pennies on the dollar, but that's just my approach. But I support this because it is ARPA. It came from the federal government to support people with COVID. Public safety is the number one thing that we have going in this community, and our officers need to be supported. But they shouldn't get all the support. Everybody else in this environment needs to have the same support because they're the civilian police force. They're the ones that do the code enforcement. They're the ones who build the roads. And that's why I would support it. And I would encourage you to think of it that way instead of we're taking money out of the budget and giving it to our staff, but we're taking money that was given to us to invest in our people so we can take care of our city. So I'm going to support it. Because I think it's that important that we maintain continuity.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of reiterate what Councilmember Dovey said. You know, if this were money that we were raising taxes for, that we were taking money out of the pockets of our residents, I would have a very serious issue with that. However, with this being ARPA money and the intent of it coming from the federal government is to help the community in the very best way that it can help, that it can do it. And in our special meeting this evening, we talked about the different possibilities of use of that 19 some odd million in ARPA funds. And I think that this is one of the best uses that will not only help the officers and the city staff, but it will help retain them, and retaining them will help every resident of our city. And so I think that it truly is a help to those in our city who have had tax increases, who are paying the burden here. And it's helping them without them having to directly pay for it through city taxes, through city funds. Federal funding that we should be using in the very wisest way, and I think that this is a wise use of that funding.
All right, thank you.
Council President's first.
Well, she wants to go last.
She can go before me, that's fine.
Okay, well, she wants to go last. So,
Then
why
I'll
don't we
go.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'd like to thank you, Brian, for responding to my questions this week and last week. And I'm going to take a different approach on this because as I've read this, the recommendation, one of my questions last week was based on 2.5% of someone's salary here at the city, what would be the lowest bonus, and I'm not sure that's the right word to use for this, given out in the highest, and you responded to that. I appreciate that. And my suggestion is that we offer everyone the same amount, because I think that would make this more equitable for everyone. And the amount that I have come up with in my mind is $3,000, $1,500 one year and $1,500 the second year. I think that if we did it just based on the salary, we would have some folks making a little over $1,000 and some folks making almost $5,000. And I found that the difference just to be more than I wanted to see. There's other ways to retain staff too. It's the climate at City Hall. Perhaps we need to allow some staff who are able to work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Perhaps we need to look at their COLAs again. But there's other ways to keep people here at the City of Federal Way. And as for our, the police officers, last week in this country, at least 13 police officers were shot. It is a very dangerous job. 2 of them that were shot were here in Washington State, and they were both shot in the head. So I certainly, if this is a retention incentive, I guess is what we're going to call it, if that would keep officers here, then for sure let's do that. Because it's hard to find officers. It's hard to find someone who wants to put their life on the line every time they put on a uniform. And so let's do that. But I would like to see that everyone get the same amount, which I would say would be $3,000, based on having, today, I believe you said we have $336 regular full-time employees and 9 regular part-time employees as of today. My other concern is for employees who have started after January 1st. For instance, Amy in our office. So she started last week, and maybe we can have all employees working at the city get this, but prorate it as to what month they started. Because I just think that would be make it an even better benefit for the employees here at the city. So anyway, I'd like us to think about maybe $3,000 for every employee and prorating it for those who start work during the year and are still here on December 1st, and offering other incentives to stay here in the city. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Norton? Did you?
I'll tell you that I agree with Susan, and I think that maybe we should look at this for our city staff and make it a little more fair and equitable for them, because of the variance in what they'd be receiving, and possibly, I think her idea actually comes out to be less money in the end for us. So it would be better. It doesn't cost as much.
Thank you. Councilmember Sepa Dawson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think what I wanted to say has already been covered, so I don't have a whole lot, but I just want to, we've always talked about police officers, and now including city employees. I think it's very important. And so I do support this idea, how it's done. If different ideas are considered, then definitely let's look at it, but I don't think we should not do it. And again, I do definitely agree with Deputy Mayor in terms of also other retention incentives. And so I would totally support her ideas about other, on top of this, by the way, also other ways of retention. In particular, when we know we don't want to lose people who have historical and, expertise and yeah, so, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, I would just like to add, I think that doing it percentage-wise is really the wisest way to do it. The idea of a $3,000 incentive bonus over 2 years, $1,500. One of the main ideas, it shows appreciation, but also, just as the name implies, is to retain employees. And a high-paid employee, I don't think that $1,500 this year is really going to provide much incentive to stay if they have an offer, good offer somewhere else, where a 2.5% of their base salary does provide more incentive to actually stay and would do more for retention. And so I think that's important. Deputy Mayor, as you said, you know, what I do wholeheartedly agree with, we need to be taking a look at other things that we can do, I believe, on top of this to help retain employees, to do what we can do to provide the best environment for working. You know, if that is, you know, telecommuting a day or two a week for those employees who are able to do so, you know, I think that we should ask HR to take a look at some of the different things that we could do, creatively do, to provide a better work environment for employees. But that would be in addition to this. Those are things that we should be doing regardless. And it would be in addition to this retention bonus. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dovey, then Councilmember Tran.
Yeah, the one thing that I would add is I agree with Deputy Mayor Honda on the part of people that just joined. They should be able to participate in the program. You know, it's, if somebody's been here 10 months and they get through the year, I mean, that's what we want. We want 10 months and retain them. So there's got to, maybe there's a cutoff. It's not just a hard thing, January 1. It's maybe anybody up until June 1 or whatever it is. I mean, they still participate in the program, but we need to encourage the people that come on to stay on because they're very expensive to hire new people. So I agree with that portion of the Deputy Mayor's comment that, you know, we have to be maybe more inclusive on the time. But I also feel pretty strongly the percent is the way to go because everybody has a different job that they do in this city. Not that one's, well, some are more important than others, unfortunately, but the 2.5% is an equalizer across everybody instead of just saying everybody's going to get the same number.
Okay, Councilmember Tran, then Council President Kochmar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have one comment and then two questions. So, you know, when I look at this people who sit on this dais, many of you own your own business and you run your own business, so you know what I'm talking about. Money is not actually a single factor that retain your employees. It's not. It's one of them. But the work environment, just like Deputy Mayor said, and work-life balance is another factor that the employee will decide to stay with the company or move on. Money is not the only factor, right? So, having said that, I do have two questions. So let's say if some staff sign up with this bonus, is there any requirement that they have to stay with us in a certain amount of time? 6 months, 1 year before they can move on?
But before after they get the incentive pay?
Yes.
No, it's from, if they work the full year, then they would get it. And if they wanted to leave after that, then that's.
So feel free to go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And to that point, yeah, I would agree with you that this, we're not representing you today that this is the one thing that will keep employees here. There's clearly other things that factor into their decision of whether they stay or not. But this is nonetheless one thing that can go towards that.
Okay. Okay. The other question I want to ask is there a way we can use this ARPA money for some kind of tax rebate so that we can give a little bit back to the community? Is there a way we can do that?
And that goes back to our earlier discussion in the special meeting of when we're going to come back to you about what expenses could be eligible for ARPA funding that you have asked about, and that could be one of them.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you. So, Brian, can you tell me why you chose the percentage versus a flat rate?
I'm going to pass it to the chief because this originally started as a police proposal, and they had talked about a flat rate for all employees, but I believe there was some concerns about the very issues that you've talked about tonight, that the ones that have been here the longest are typically the ones that are the higher earners, and so some of whom have been here since the city incorporated, and so to pay them the same as someone who just started, there was some concern about that, but I don't know if you want to expand on that, Chief.
Sure. When we looked at retention incentive pay for police officers, as a city, we talked about maybe about $5,000 because King County's offering $4,000, Pierce County's now offering $10,000 for, deputy retention. It's very competitive market out there for police officers. Not too many people are wanting to do the job, and then to hire someone probably takes 2.5 months, 3 months to background someone. Then you got your 5.5 month academy, and then you got your 4-month field training program. It's a long, so to lose someone, it's a tremendous, operational impact to the organization. So there was this talk about $5,000, and that was brought up from, a couple of council members. So what we wanted to do was, we didn't want to do a 1-year retention, because we didn't want somebody to stay and say, yeah, I'll stay till December, but I'll leave in January. So from management perspective, we thought, let's split this, so we have a 2-year retention program. So when you do a 2.5%, that's 5%. So for an employee who makes $100,000, that would be about $5,000, give or take. So that was a reason. And then I approached the guild president and guild executive team and said, what would be most equitable for your officers? And they really liked the percentage, because they didn't want a brand-new officer just coming out of the academy getting the same retention pay as an officer who might have been here, for 15 years. So they thought the percentage was what their membership would appreciate the most, giving credit for people who've been here in the trenches for a number of years. We have brand-new people, they're just happy to have a job. And then we have people who've been here since the department was formed. So those are the reasons why we came up with 2.5, 2.5.
All right.
Go ahead.
And I believe that some of those that have been here an extended period of time are the ones that are most likely to say, hey, now's a great time to retire. And if we can keep them for another year or two, we're all the better off.
Well, let me, the deputy mayor has a question.
Thank you. So, Brian, when I asked what would be the lowest and the highest paid bonus, your response was the lowest would be $1,064.20 and the highest $4,931.95. Is that for 1 year?
Okay.
So then, maybe we could increase the 3,000 to 5,000, if those numbers were for 1 year. I still think it would be better for employees if everyone got the same amount, and as long as it was an amount that was enough to make a difference for them. One other answer. So if in one of your responses today, I asked how many vacancies we have, and you said 19. One of the things I hear and other council members hear often is that our staff do more than one job. And so
I'm doing 3 tonight.
So it would be great if we could really work, and I really work hard on getting these positions filled, and not only these positions, but positions on top of this that we need. We know the city clerk has said for many years she needs more people in her department. I totally agree with that. Parks has said for many years that they don't have a park planner. I mean, they need people in their department. And I think we need a commitment that we are going to go there. We are going to get these 19 vacancies filled. Plus, we're going to go ahead and get other jobs added so that our staff are not so overworked, because that is another reason why perhaps people are leaving. And of the 19 vacancies, I think 14 were in the police department.
Okay, let's go with Councilmember Adobe and then Councilmember Norton.
A question I have, when we talked about the 2.5%, did you guys look at people's tax brackets? Because if we're going to give somebody a big lump sum and it pumps them over the tax line, they're actually going to get less money because they're going to pay more taxes. So, I mean, when you look at 2.5%, that might be the right number, so somebody doesn't get bounced from the 30% to the 35% tax bracket and have to give most of their money to the federal government? I mean, did you look at that calculation at all?
No.
So I think in my world, I think we want to look at how much they can keep in their pocket instead of how much we give them. And a 2.5% bump over 2, which is the same money, they may keep more in their pocket than if they have to pay it to the federal government, because it may put people over the threshold.
All right. Councilmember Norton?
I was just doing some math. So somebody who makes $45,000 a year, which I don't know what the average income is here, would get $1,125. So I really don't think that would bump anybody into another tax bracket. But the median income for King County is $58,000. And I only know that because of a nonprofit that I had. So if you do the math, it's only going to be a couple $1,000s for most of the people. I think that's why Deputy Mayor Hondo was so concerned. And I also just wanted to add, you know, we're talking about retention, we're talking about keeping people on board. So the University of Washington sent everybody home for quite some time. And they noticed that the productivity of the employees who stayed home went up dramatically. And another thing that they noticed, and there have been studies that have been conducted on it, and it's just really interesting to me, so that's why I read about it. The facilities end up, like our building that we're in right now, end up using less electricity, less water. So it ends up costing less money overall to allow people to stay home who can stay home. They're happier. So I really think, and they can stay home with their kids, get more work done for us. If possible, for those who want to stay home, if we could just give it a thought, look into the studies that have been performed over the last 2 years. There's real data out there, and put that as a consideration of retention, as well as giving them, to me, $1,100 is not that much money, you guys. In today's world, it's not going to do it. You know, we have to look at other means of keeping people here, and figuring out a way to give the people who work here some relief. As a business owner, I would not do this to my employees. I would not ask them to do 2 or 3 jobs. I would never do that. They do not work on the weekends. They don't work at night. They work 8 hours, and I make them go home, and they have to fight me to work overtime because I don't want them to be tired. And I also pay them pretty well. I always pay them way over prevailing wage. But that's my choice, you know, and that's how I run my business, and that's how I bid my jobs. But just as an employer, I think we really need to sit down and have a long discussion as a council, which I think it's on the agenda for our retreat, to look at fully staffing our city hall so that the people who work here, who are actually doing all the work, can feel better about their jobs and want to stay here longer. And I'll stop now. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Walsh, do you have a motion?
Oh,
Or
wait,
actually,
we got Councilmember Tran.
Councilmember
had
Tran?
something to say.
Did you have something, Tran? Councilmember
Were you
Tran?
going to say something?
Oh, thank you. We have a sidebar conversation. If I was going to support this proposal, then my preference would be to give out a fixed amount of money instead of the percentage. I just
So
want to make.
my suggestion would be, let's move the main motion, and then there could be an amendment. We see where the amendment falls. So why don't we start this, Councilmember Dovey?
I just want to say one thing. I'm not a tax accountant, but anybody that makes $83,000 a year, if they hit the $86,000, they're going to go up to 2% tax bracket. And anybody that makes $41,000, if they go above that, they're going to go to the next tax bracket. So I don't know where people are bracketed, but this is not going to affect somebody that makes $70,000 or somebody makes $30,000, but somebody in the $80s and somebody in the mid-40s, this will move them probably to the next tax bracket, if we give it in a lump sum over to put them over.
Okay, Council President Kochmar, did you have?
Well, I just want to say, I'll make the motion, but I think that it's not in 1 year, it's in 2 years, whether it be a fixed sum, so it wouldn't be all in 1 year.
Actually, it's Councilmember I'm going to ask to make the motion. Councilmember Walsh?
Oh, sorry.
I move approval of proposed monetary retention incentives for all city employees in 2022 and 2023.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Council President,
I think she has an amendment.
who does?
Deputy
Whose
Mayor
microphone
Honda.
is on? Deputy Mayor Hunt.
Okay, so ideally, I would like to take this off right now and go back to the drawing board and start over again, because I don't support it the way it is.
I could support that if that's what you want to do, so we're scientific in what we're going to do.
Yes.
Okay?
I'll support it.
I mean, I think we should vote that we're going to do it, but let's not legislate from the dais. We don't, I mean, there may be numbers that we need to have. I think the message is we need to do this, and let's be very thoughtful how we do it.
So then my amendment could be that we will give a retention incentive to our employees, with more information coming later. I don't, the look on your face.
Mayor,
That
if I
means
could
nothing will happen.
if I could interject, the motion to amend needs to be language to modify the motion on the table. So I don't see how you can mesh those two things.
Okay.
You don't need to vote it down and then
Right.
give direction.
There's been a motion and a second. So is there, hold on, there's been a motion and a second. Is there an amendment to be made? Or do we, if there's no amendment to be made, we
So-
vote?
I could remove my second to the motion.
Okay.
Table this until next month and talk about
So there has been a, so you made the second, okay. So the second's been removed. And do you remove your motion, Councilmember Walsh? Or not?
I would prefer to go ahead. with
Okay.
the-
Is there another second?
But if there's no second, then
Well,
I-
let me ask. There's been a motion on the floor to move approval of the proposed monetary retention incentive for all city employees in 21 and 22 and 23. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? I'll ask one last time. Is there a second to that motion? The motion fails for lack of a second. Now we'll move on to item 8.
No.
This matter is done. I mean, this matter failed
Well,
for lack of a.
No, we can go,
Okay, is there a Council
it
President?
just, it just didn't go anywhere. We can make another motion, which
Okay.
means
Okay.
I move to table
Okay,
the motion until information is brought back
Okay.
at the next council meeting. I don't want to lose this.
Second.
And that information would be 2 different proposals. One would be the 2.2%.
2.5.
I'm sorry, 2.5%? What the heck?
2.5.
Versus a set amount per employee not to exceed the amount of money available through the ARPA funds, which is 1.5 something for the 2-year program. So if you would bring that back at the next council meeting, then we could vote it at the next council meeting, one or the other.
so it's not a motion to table. It is a motion to continue this
Thank
to the
you.
next month, to the next. to
So
make
I
sure
make
it's
a
voted.
motion to continue the discussion at the next council meeting with 2 different proposals.
And you made a second?
I made a second, and there's other things to discuss in here too, so that,
That's fine. Like a hybrid work environment and other.
That's not up to
But
the.
it's not,
excuse me.
that's not
Point of
up to
order.
the council.
Excuse me. Those are working conditions that are not set by the council.
But it would be, I would like to add employees who have started after January 1st. I think everyone just needs to read this and see if there's things in here that we'd like to change.
Okay, including the pro rata per employee.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that, the mayor runs the day-to-day operations of the city. We're already in a hybrid model. The directors are using their discretion there, so we're not going to be discussing or modifying or the way we're running the city with regard to having people show up to work, We're a service delivery organization. When people show up to come to the city, they should have somebody here to deal with them. You got police departments, parks, community, the community center, vast array of nobody in public works, nobody in parks can just call in and appear telephonically, or via electronically. So that's what we're doing. All right, there's been a motion to move this to the next meeting, and that's been seconded. Is there any discussion, any further discussion?
Clarify, you're coming back to council, not committee?
Correct.
Okay.
To council.
Councilmember Norton? Oh, okay, all right. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure, I didn't want to lose that. I wanted
got
to
you.
make sure that we move this forward.
Very
So
good, thank you very much. Okay, thanks. Ordinance, first reading, item A, ordinance, Council Bill 812, amending Title 19 of the Federal Revised Code regarding public transportation facilities. We'll have a staff report. The staff report was presented at the public hearing, so we already had that. Stephanie, is there any public hearing?
I didn't have
public
anyone
comment?
signed. No, I don't have anyone signed up.
Okay, no public comment. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance Council Bill 812, amending Title 19 of the Federal Revised Code regarding public transportation facilities. An ordinance of the City of Federal, Washington relating to public transportation facilities, amending Federal Revised Code 1905-120, 1905-200, and 19-105-020, and adding new sections to chapters 19-225 and 19-240 Federal Revised Code.
All right, Councilmember Dovey, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the March 1, 2022 council meeting for second reading and enactment.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimous at last. All right, council reports, Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, the only report that I have is, I attended a meeting this morning with individuals from Federal Way that are going to want to come to a proposal to try to link our neighborhoods together and get them more involved in making Federal Way a better place to live. And I thought it was a very good ad hoc meeting, and probably more to come.
Very good, thank you very much. Councilmember Walsh.
I have nothing further at this time.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one quick public service announcement, and that is the DSHS office located on 348. We are going to reopen the office to full service effective the end of February. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Norton.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who came to the Coffee with the Council meeting. It was a really good opportunity for the community to get together and have a discussion. And I think it was much more calm than the one that we had on January 15th. And I'm looking forward to meeting with the community next month. And not in an official capacity, but I'm really looking forward to working with the different groups in the community so that we can come up with some solutions together.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Sepa Dawson.
Yeah, I too was at the same meeting that Councilmember Dovey was, and I totally support the proposal that you just submitted, and thank you so much. And with that, I end my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hondo.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about a food drive that I'm currently involved in. The Tool Library, which is located at 1700 South 340th Street here in Federal Way, and the Federal Way Seroptimus Club, of which I'm co-president this year along with Linda Staples, is holding a food drive for the senior center, which is located right outside of Federal Way. They don't get the same funding that the multi-service food center, food bank gets, and right now there's a need for food. And so this food drive is going through the entire month of March, of February, excuse me. March is a diaper drive. And you can drop food off at the Tool Library. It's open Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays. Or there's a number you can call and we will come and pick up the food, 253-237-2290. For the last 2 weeks, we have taken a lot of food to the food bank. We've had a car, the trunk has been full and the back seat has been full of food for 2 weeks in a row. And that's pretty impressive. We'd like to keep that up. So once again, the Tool Library at 1700 South 340th Street. Kind of hard to find. If you need help, let me know. And please support this so that we can help our seniors and families who come to this food bank over at the senior center. It's not just for seniors. The food bank is open to all people. In talking to some of the local businesses around here, the vaccination verification program is really hurting them. And I would like to, with our numbers falling with COVID, and they're still higher than we would like them to be, but they are falling. Businesses are opening. City halls around King County are opening. Fife just opened their city hall for the first time in months and months. I would really encourage the King County executive to end the program. This did not come from the King County Board of Health. It came from the King County executive. And I would really like him to end the program. And if a business wanted to continue to ask a customer if they had a vaccination card, perfectly able to. It is their business, and a business owner can do what they'd like. But many of our business owners, especially restaurants, are really hurting when they turn people away because they don't have a vaccination card. And the last thing I'd like to end with, which is often people say that folks remember the last thing you say, is the 80th anniversary of Executive Order 9066. This Saturday, February 19th, 2022, marks the 80th anniversary of Executive Order 9066. On February 19th, 1942, President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066 that sent 120,000 American citizens and immigrants of Japanese descent into 10 internment camps for most of the duration of World War II. We remember this as an example of a violation of constitutional rights without due process. By remembering, we hope to never make that same mistake again. My father-in-law was just 10 years old when his family lost everything. All they could take was what fit into one suitcase per person. He recently passed away at age 90 years old. Very few of these folks that were in the internment camps are still surviving. But there are still people in our community who were in internment camps. There are still people who do not know that this event even happened. We have sworn to protect the Constitution, and let's do so by remembering Executive Order 9066. If you research this, you'll find that throughout Puget Sound there are different ceremonies happening this week, and especially on Saturday. For some who might not know, the Puyallup Fairgrounds was one of the first stops for some Japanese families on their way to internment camps. So this happened in our own backyard. My mother-in-law, who is just turned 89, was 10 when their family was taken, and she had 3 little brothers, and not all of her brothers could carry a suitcase. They were too young. So I'd just like everyone to remember that this is the 80th anniversary of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Kochmar.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Hunt. I was in the legislature when we had a Remembrance Day, and I believe your parents were there for that. And I remember being told that there were families, whole families housed in a stall, a horse stall, and that's where they lived. And then they would leave that to get food at a central food area. Terrible that that happened in our country, terrible. Hopefully that will never, ever happen again. I do want to say that with regard to those people who talked about the school district tonight, we are going to start having meetings with the school board. This is really quite an achievement, hopefully. We're not quite sure how this is going to look, but the only way we're going to move forward as a city is, part of it is to help improve the schools. And so hopefully if we can all work together. The real key in this community is if we all work together to make this a better community. And the only way we're going to do that is if we have enough people volunteering to step forward to make a difference. And so I'm really happy that the school board has actually agreed to meet with the council. Not sure how many people will be involved, whether it'll be public meeting. We haven't discussed that yet. But fortunately, they've agreed to it. So this is quite a milestone for us. And finally, I just want to say that when we had our meeting with the town hall here, with, coffee conversation with the council, we actually, Deputy Mayor Honda and I were sitting with a group, a small group of people that were talking about the downtown core. And they told us that a company called Expeditors is moving to the sanctuary, which is over by Weyerhaeuser, with 600 employees. And that's coming this summer. I don't know if you knew that. 800. So that's a big thing. We're good with that. So thank you. I just want to let you know that. Thank you very much, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Great council meeting, everybody. We are adjourned.
Can we extend